Hey everybody, welcome back. We're gonna pick up from Lei Win, but like they said last time, that Carlos's letter was blacked out because of some changes that were made to his past because of Alicia. So we're gonna go up to here and we're just gonna read it really quick. The last thing that we had happen to him is he found the coffee shop, but just as he was about to go in, the police grabbed him. So let's see how this might have changed. I burst into the coffee shop, ignoring everyone's startled looks, and stopped in front of the barista. I took a deep breath and asked if he knew someone named Alicia. Alicia? Yeah, she used to work here, but she disappeared a while ago. Actually, I'm not entirely certain, so don't take my word for it, but I heard that I heard that she might be dead. That couldn't be true. I stumbled back in shock and fell onto a couch. The barista put a hot latte in front of me and sat down by my side, trying to comfort me, but I couldn't hear anything anymore. It must be a lie. My big sister, she couldn't just... There was a smiley face on the latte, but it started to blur and turned into a frowning face. Eventually, the frowning face was gone. Carlos. Aww. So yeah, that's about... Yeah, with the little lamb Billy, so she had to run. And then got snagged. And then we changed that fate. But... let's see what happened to Lei Win. Looks like she's tied to this new character. After being hospitalized for gastritis, I learned from Mr. Wen that he had never blamed me for the photo incident. He and I were able to go back to how things were, like nothing had happened. Occasionally, some fools in the school would still gossip about us, but I had learned to stop caring and pretend to not hear them at all. As Gakko kept getting closer and closer, everyone, including those gossiping idiots, had to focus on the exam. Even my life had turned into a constant migration between classroom and home. I barely went to the tennis court anymore. Before we knew it, the final simulation exam was upon us. A sense of anxiety filled the entire school. Rumor had it that if anybody screwed up on the simulation exam, he or she would be required to stay in school for an intensive study session until 2 days before Gakko. It was lunch break. Everyone was sitting in their own seats trying to study for one last time. My phone suddenly buzzed. A text from Jing. Breaking news. Mr. Wen resigned last week. I couldn't believe my eyes, and I turned around to look at her. She made a sad face. How could it be? The art class had been canceled for the last 2 weeks. I had been hitting the books, so I didn't realize that I indeed hadn't seen him for a while until just now. When I went to my balcony, the lights had always been off in his apartment. I thought he had simply been going to bed early. The exam began in the afternoon. I looked at the paper in my hands, but all I could see was random gibberish that was jumping all over the place. All I could think about was Mr. Wen's resignation. Jimmy was really going at it. Half of his papers were hanging off the side of his desk. A thought that had never occurred to me appeared in my head. Should I just copy it? But I had never cheated in my entire life. But if I didn't, I would have to stay in detention for extra study sessions after school. I didn't want to stay. I just wanted to go back home as soon as I could. I took a peek at Miss Yang. She seemed to be lost in her own thoughts. I made up my mind and decided to copy Jimmy's answers. I never knew that Jimmy was such a genius. No one ever paid much attention to him. I was writing down all of his answers when I felt a tap on my shoulder. Oh no, I had been caught. A note had been left on my desk, asking me to go to the tutoring room after school. After school, Miss Yang met me in the tutoring room. She said nothing about the cheating. She only asked me to stay for the study sessions. During the sessions, I kept staring at my phone, hoping that he would respond to my messages. Nothing. It was 11 p.m. when I got home. I knocked on his door softly. No response. I went to check his balcony. The lights were still off. I sat on the floor with my back against the door, thinking that I would be able to hear him if he came back in the middle of the night. 1 a.m. 2 a.m. It began to rain outside the window. 3 a.m. 4 a.m. It was almost morning. What should I do if I still couldn't find him tomorrow? I suddenly had a bad feeling. Would I ever be able to see him again? They win. Aww. This was the last simulation exam that I would be in charge of this year. And Gakko, the real one, would be coming up next for my students. I unintentionally let out a sigh upon realizing this. The most stressful time of being a head teacher was the senior year. Time was always tight, and the job was difficult. To make things worse, I still had to watch over these prepubescent and rebellious teenagers. Some of them might be over 18, but mentally they are all still just kids. Back in my school days, I had only heard about so-called young love, and I had barely seen any student couples. Nowadays, student couples weren't even something worth mentioning. Love triangles, gay relationships, teacher-student relationships, all kinds of stuff could happen nowadays. Well, I suppose I was already too old to understand kids these days. All I could wish for right now was for them to graduate as planned, and to leave me a decent graduation rate. I need to go and take a good vacation after this exam. The exams had been handed out, and everyone was ready to begin. The bell rang. I walked around the classroom and sat back in the chair next to the lectern. I'd been having trouble standing for too long these days. Maybe I had been too tired. Or it was just a normal part of getting older. The room felt stuffy. The cicadas outside the window were very noisy. I looked outside the window, lost in my own thoughts. Somebody coughed loudly. My mind was pulled back. Lei Wen looked a little nervous, and her eyes were drifting all over the place. Very few students ever realized how good the view was from up here. I didn't go towards her directly. Instead, I walked out of the classroom and circled behind her through the door in the back of the room. I realized that she was copying Jimmy's answers. I left a note. I told Lei Wen to come and meet me in the tutoring room after school. I intended to talk to her about her cheating. I had no intention of reporting it to the school. I had been teaching her since freshman year in middle school. She had been through a lot, so I had always looked out for her. While her grades were never the best, her character was beyond reproach. She was not that kind of student. She hadn't arrived yet. I stood in front of the window watching the clouds gathering over the track field. It might rain tonight. I remembered the last time I had seen W. It had also been raining that evening. He had asked me to meet him in a coffee shop. He told me that he had gotten cancer and might not have much longer to live. He decided to resign from the school and leave Beijing. Maybe even leave the country, at least for a while. He asked me to keep it a secret, and if possible, to take care of all the related matters when he was gone. I didn't know what else to say, so I just asked him what he was going to do. I also contacted a doctor I knew and asked if there were any other feasible treatment plans. Later, he told me he had other things to take care of and said goodbye. I watched quietly as he walked away. As soon as he walked out of the coffee shop, I buried my head on the table and cried. I had always been so self-righteous and self-centered. I wanted to think of and do everything for him, yet I had never thought about or asked him what he would have wanted me to do. That must be why I had to watch him leave over and over again. When we had been kids, our families lived next to each other. We had known each other for so long as I can remember. He was always playing alone in the kindergarten. He was never bullied or isolated or anything like that. He was just too smart and too different compared to the other kids of his age. We had gone to the same elementary school, same high school, and the same college. No matter where we were, he was always the best at what he did. And I had always been so proud to be his best friend. We would call each other by just one letter as our nickname. He was W, and I was Y. After we had graduated from college, he went on to study abroad, and I started working. I really wanted to go with him, but I didn't feel that we were close enough to broach this idea. So we parted ways. We began to lose touch when he met his girlfriend abroad. It was many years later when we finally met again. He had lost his fiancée, and his spirit had gone with her. His life had become a mess. I nervously suggested he come teach at my school. When he finally agreed to come, I was so happy. Something blossomed again in my heart. However, nothing more happened between us. We could be childhood friends who could talk about almost anything with each other, but we could never become more than friends. I never had the courage to tell him how I really felt, or how I had always felt. I was afraid that if I ever did, it would have cost us our current relationship. I just wanted to stay beside him, talk with him, and laugh with him. Years had gone by. That 3-word spell that I had hidden inside my heart kept getting buried deeper and deeper, but it had never lost its power. It was just getting harder and harder for me to speak those words out loud. I felt myself turning into an utter fool, but I couldn't help myself. Lewin had finally come. I didn't ask her the reason for cheating. I just told her to come to the group study sessions. No matter why she had cheated, the study session could only help. But I suddenly realized I was being my usual self again. I was making decisions for her without asking her about it. I could have simply asked her to tell me why she had cheated. I suppose I couldn't change myself, right? Yang Ying. Okay. So, we know who she wants to ask, so we'll change that. I feel like we should take Jimmy away, so that way she won't cheat with him. Yeah, that'll work. I took a peek at Miss Yang. She was looking out the window and seemed to be lost in her own thoughts. What was she thinking about? Could it also be about Mr. Wen's resignation? Why the hell was I thinking about that? I was such an idiot. I stared at the paper as hard as I could, but I still couldn't focus. How pathetic. What should I do? If only there was something to help me focus on the exam. The time for the exam soon ran out. I could already see myself sitting in the mandatory study sessions after school. I left a note. After school, Miss Yang came into the tutoring room as expected. Anything I can help you with? Well, Miss Yang, do you know why Mr. Wen resigned? Miss Yang gave me a look. I thought you were about to ask me about your grades this time. Take a look at your own paper. I picked it up. It was a disaster. I honestly don't know what is going through your kids' minds these days. Miss Yang gave me quite a tongue lashing. That sucked. Just when my mind came back from wandering, the bell signaling the end of the exam had just rung. Everything had gone well. A note had been left on my desk asking me to go to the tutoring room for after school. After school, I came to the tutoring room as Lei Wen had asked. I knew many senior students were going through a lot of pressure, but there were probably less than 10 students who would be willing to talk to their teachers about it. Nevertheless, I was thrilled that Lei Wen had come looking for me. However, she was not here to discuss the pressure of the exam or going to college. Instead, she asked me about W's abrupt resignation. I was a little unprepared, but I still remembered my promise to him. I cleared my throat, took out her test from today and showed it to her. I had to let her know that Gakko was right upon us. It was the only thing that mattered right now. She should not be thinking about anything else, definitely not that. Her face turned red and white and red again. I could still feel the awkwardness in the air after she had left the room. I knew I might be breaking her heart, but I had to do it. W would have done the same. Okay. Why would he resign? Did he not like this job? Or was it because of... My mind was drifting further and further away. The ending bell for the exam pulled me back to reality. I couldn't even look at myself when I turned in the paper. I had only solved 2 problems. I left a note. After school, Miss Yang came into the tutoring room as expected. Anything I can help you with? Well, Miss Yang, do you know why Mr. Wen resigned? Miss Yang gave me a look. I thought you were about to ask me about your grades this time. Take a look at your own paper. I picked it up. It was a disaster. I honestly don't know what is going through your kids' minds these days. Miss Yang gave me quite a tongue lashing. That sucked. I looked at Lei Wen, who was sitting by the window. She seemed to be staring at the test blankly. Was it really so hard? A note had been left on my desk asking me to go to the tutoring room after school. After school, I came to the tutoring room as Lei Wen had asked. I knew many senior students were going through a lot of pressure, but there were probably less than 10 students who would be willing to talk to their teachers about it. Nevertheless, I was thrilled that Lei Wen had come looking for me. However, she was not here to discuss the pressure of the exam or going to college. Instead, she asked me about W's abrupt resignation. I was a little unprepared, but I still remembered my promise to him. I cleared my thoughts, took out her test from today and showed it to her. I had to let her know that Gakko was right upon us. It was the only thing that mattered right now. She should not be thinking about anything else, definitely not that. Her face turned red and white and red again. I could still feel the awkwardness in the air after she had left the room. I knew it might be breaking her heart, but I had to do it. W would have done the same. Okay. If we leave everything on her side, maybe, and just... I looked at Lei Wen, who was sitting by the window. As she was looking back at me, and she was looking back at me, too. She should be focusing on her test. I shook my head and signaled to her to get back to the test. She lowered her head. Half an hour later, the exam was over. A note had been left on my desk, asking me to go to the tutoring room after school. After school, I came to the tutoring room as Lei Wen had asked. I knew many senior students were going through a lot of pressure, but there were probably less than 10 students who were willing to talk to their teachers about it. Nevertheless, I was thrilled that Lei Wen had come looking for me. However, she was not here to discuss the pressure of the exam or going to college. Instead, she asked me about W's abrupt resignation. I was a little unprepared, but I still remembered my promise to him. I made up something on the spot, telling her that he had gone traveling abroad. Her eyes lit up when she heard my lie. She asked me a few other questions about schoolwork before she eventually left. She was very polite and nice the whole time, but the moment she closed the door, I saw her turn around and run away so fast that her hair was flying behind her. And then I saw her from the window, running out of the school like an innocent and joyful little deer. For a moment, I thought I had just seen my younger self. I took a peek at Miss Yang, and she was staring right back at me. I was so startled that I almost jumped, and suddenly I could understand the questions on the exam again. Thank goodness. Whatever, I need to finish the exam first before worrying about anything else. If I screwed this up, I wouldn't be able to go anywhere after school. I left a note. After school, Miss Yang came into the tutoring room as expected. Anything I can help you with? Well, Miss Yang, do you know why Mr. Wen resigned? Miss Yang gave me a look. Oh, him? He said he wanted to go and travel abroad for a little while. He said he'd come back in a month. He went traveling abroad? For a month? Gakko would be over by then. I was still hoping I could ask him for advice on what colleges to apply to. Although, as long as I could still see him, it would be okay. Meanwhile, I need to work hard for that one last exam. All right. See here. Three years had gone by since I graduated from high school. College wasn't what I had expected it to be. In my imagination, college was supposed to be a place where ambitious and hopeful young people could better themselves before they entered the real world. In reality, it was more like an amusement park. Most people never thought about their future. The professors barely cared whether anybody was even listening to their lectures. Rather than teaching the students, they usually cared more about how much funding they could get for their own private projects. Even the library didn't have many good books. Instead, it was more of a hot spot for young couples to go and make out. I no longer even went to campus anymore. I might as well not even study at home. My friends were all super cool. Every few days, they would host a party at my place. We did karaoke, cooked hot pot, and called for fried chicken deliveries. My room was always full of the smell of cigarettes and beer. A life like this had made me lose the concept of time. It also helped with alleviating my feelings of loneliness. I lay down on my couch and slowly fell asleep. These days, I'd been sleeping on my couch more often than in my bed. Mr. Wen walked up to the couch and gently took my hand. I opened my eyes. I didn't go to campus today either. After graduating from high school, I never saw Mr. Wen again. I would often imagine that he would suddenly appear by my side, just like the day of the art exhibit. He would even show up in my dreams sometimes. But he never did show up for real. Every time I asked Miss Yang about him, she would always stop herself before saying a word. I stopped asking after a while. I knew I probably never would know where Mr. Wen was, but I hoped that he was doing great. Because the early summer that we had spent together would always be the best season of my life. They win. Aww. Let's see if we do this. It's gonna be hard to see if we can get an S rank out of this. I rubbed my eyes. It was Miss Yang, not him. I must not have been totally awake. I climbed off the couch, went into the kitchen, and helped Miss Yang with dinner. I was a repeating senior student this year. Because of a stomach ache, I had to miss one of the exams during Gakko. I was going to give up on going to college altogether, but Miss Yang spent a long time convincing me to give it another try. Concerned about me being alone again, Miss Yang had moved in next door to help take care of me. She was living in the apartment that Mr. Wen used to live in. After Gakko, Mr. Wen had vanished from my life entirely. I would often imagine that if I started to give up on myself, maybe he would come back into my life to stop me from ruining my life. I would be willing to wait for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, even longer, as long as he would come back. I had been thinking about this so much that I even dreamt about it all the time. In the end, he was probably just a passerby in my life. Look, there's a tennis match. Miss Yang put the remote down. It was the 4D Gate Open. One of the finalists was a Chinese player. Father used to like him a lot. He would always watch his matches. Not only was he a tennis genius, he was also incredibly popular on the internet. He was young and handsome, came from a rich family, and had a professional team handling his business off the court. Besides the astronomical prize money from his matches, his sponsorships were even more lucrative. Every time he went on to a talk show with his beautiful female assistant, he would receive more than tens of thousands in payment. Lots of people were always posting about him online. They adored him like he was a pop idol. Miss Yang kept staring at the TV while pouring some soy sauce on her noodles. Since you like tennis so much, have you ever thought about going into a career that has something to do with it? My chopstick stopped for a moment. Maybe. Okay. I climbed off the couch and turned on the TV. I handed Mr. Wen a can of beer and got myself one. The evening news was on. It was about the wedding ceremony of a tennis player that was incredibly popular for a while now. A few days ago, he had just announced that he was retiring from tennis. He also announced that he was getting married to his long-time female assistant, who used to be a tennis player too. I was quite shocked when I saw the name of his fiancée on the TV screen, Quen Sayu. That couldn't just be a coincidence. Ever since I was old enough to remember, I had never seen my mother. Father had only mentioned her once, but I had never, ever forgotten her name. I'd always thought that tennis was just a hobby from when Father was younger. He watched the games all the time, and he also had a yellow racket in storage. Under his influence, I started practicing tennis too, and the yellow racket was the first one I had ever used. Now that I thought about it, the only matches Father had ever watched all that time was... Now that I thought about it, the only matches Father had ever watched all had the same person in them. He wasn't watching the game. He was only watching Mother. And that racket must have belonged to her too. I chugged the beer and looked to Mr. Wen, who was supposed to be sitting at the table. Except there was no one but me at the table. The beer can I had handed over was just sitting there. The hot pot in front of me was filled with overcooked vegetables and meatballs. The trash can nearby was stuffed with my yellow tennis racket and several bags of fried chicken that I hadn't even taken a bite of. I hunched over the table and bursted out crying. Okay. Oh. I had another dream. I climbed off of my couch. I changed into my exercise clothes, picked up my racket, and headed out. I was a repeating senior student this year. Because of a stomach ache, I had to miss one of the exams during Gakko. I was going to give up on going to college altogether, but Miss Yang spent a long time convincing me to give it another try. After Gakko, Mr. Wen had vanished from my life entirely. I would often imagine that if I started to give up on myself, maybe he would come back into my life to stop me from ruining it. I would be willing to wait for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, even longer, as long as he would come back. I had been thinking about this so much that I had that I even dreamt about it all the time. In the end, he was probably just a passerby in my life. The light over the tennis court was maintained by some of the residents themselves. The dim light bulb kept making a buzzing noise. 1, 2, 3. I had just hit all 30 of the balls that I had, so I picked up the now empty basket. I walked to the other side of the court and collected the balls before hitting them all again. No one else was on the tennis court. All I could hear was the sound of the balls hitting my racket and then bouncing off the ground. Oh. So it looks like we've actually got all of the endings for this. But there was no S ending. God, why do you keep toying with me? Why can't you just let me go? No. No. Nightmare. Another nightmare. What is going on with me? I'll go downstairs and get some air. Willie must still be asleep. His door isn't locked. Come to think of it, I've never seen his room. Well, I'm going in. He's not here. This room looks quite different from mine. It's pretty cool. This red thing, it's called a guitar, I think. Does he know how to play the guitar? I sat down in front of the desk. A picture inside a metal frame caught my attention. This photo. There are 2 people and a dog in it. The person on the right looks a lot like myself. And the dog? It looks just like Willie, although it is a little smaller. I can't see the face of the person on the left very clearly for some reason. Nevertheless, it looks like it's a boy. I feel like I have seen him before. As I was scouring my memories for the face of this boy, I felt like an electric shock had suddenly pierced my brain. Then, everything turned white in front of my eyes. Look, Fluffy knows how to count. The die showed 4 and he barked 4 times.
Pfft, it's just counting. What's so special about that?
Fluffy, go get my slippers. Look how smart my Fluffy is.
You're so lazy that you won't even get your own slippers.
Fluffy, go get my snacks.
Are you telling the dog to get your snacks? Do you have a hole in your head? Fine, I'll go get them for you. Here they are.
Did you eat some?
Who would want to eat your osmanthus cake? I hate that stuff.
Then why are there only 4 pieces when there were 5 earlier?
It must have been Fluffy. See, there's some incriminating dog hair right there.
Don't you frame Fluffy. Fluffy wouldn't do it. And you know what I just noticed? I saw you touch your head just now. You always do that when you're lying. I'm on to you.
What, do you trust Fluffy more than me?
So, I like Fluffy. As long as I have Fluffy, I don't care about you at all.
Idiot. Fluffy can't be with you forever. A dog's life is much shorter than ours. I, on the other hand, might actually be by your side until the end.
You're lying to me again. Fluffy, you're going to stay with me forever, right? Aww.
Wake up. Wake up. Why did you fall asleep in my room?
Did I fall asleep?
What happened to you? Are you not feeling well?
I don't know why, but I suddenly want to bawl my heart out. I don't want to read those letters anymore. When I realized that humans have all been doomed to their horrible fates because of me, I just couldn't.
Fine, I understand.
Even though I couldn't say anything, Willie seems to know exactly what is bothering me.
It's okay. Don't cry. You have done a great job. I mean it. I'm the one who has been acting horribly. But don't worry, you won't remember any of this soon.
Huh? What? Bye. My head hurts. Where am I? What happened?
You finally woke up. I've been waiting for so long, I was beginning to worry that you might never wake up.
It's a talking dog. Are you? My pet, my neighbor's dog Fluffy. I think we said. My pet?
Good. It looks like she has forgotten everything. How dare you call me a pet? Do I look like a pet?
Well, yes.
Have you lost your memories?
Lost my memories. Wait, did I fall down the stairs and then hit my head? For some reason, I seem to remember losing my memories before. Does that even make sense?
Well, maybe you are a little confused after hitting your head. People sometimes think they remember some weird stuff after memory loss. Let me tell you my name first. My name is Will. Sometimes I go by Willie.
Willie?
Yes, Willie.
Willy Wonka?
Never mind. You don't need to know my name anyway. You may just refer to me as your master.
Master? Why is a dog my master?
I am not a dog. We are gods.
How did you know what I was just thinking? Wait. Did you say that we are gods?
As gods, it is our job. As gods, it is our job to change the fate of the humans who ask us for help. Humans encounter all kinds of nonsense in their lives. Sometimes they pray to us, desperately hoping for some kind of miracle, as they call it. I could help them, or I could just toy with them for fun. Whatever I do is up to me.
Wait. Stop babbling so fast, I don't understand. What are you saying at all?
I'm not babbling. You're just too slow. Never mind. You don't need to know too much about this either. All you need to be concerned about is preparing snacks for me every day. The room downstairs next to the staircase is mine. Remember to put the snacks on the desk every time you bring them in. If I'm asleep, unless there's something extremely important, do not wake me up.
What do you mean by extremely important? If I forget to make the snacks, should I wake you?
Well, don't bother me for something like that, obviously. Then again, why would you want to wake me up if there were no snacks? Well, let me think. For instance, if it stops snowing, then you should wake me up. That might not ever happen, though.
Okay, I got it.
Well, you just woke up after having passed out, so you should get some more rest. Just stay in bed today. I need to get to work now.
Wait, I still don't know what my own name is. Why did he leave in such a hurry? I really can't remember much else. How did I lose my memories? How has he been doing this to her?
Oh well, I'll take over from here. She's quite compulsive. She has given every letter an S ending. However, are these S endings really the perfect endings? What? Do so-called perfect endings even exist in this world? Like here. It looks like getting a good grade is a decent ending. However, Lei Wen would never hear from Wen Zhaowen again afterwards. I'm afraid Wen Zhaowen has... Could there be other possibilities between her and Miss Yang? Humans are so annoying. Maybe I should try some other possibilities. In the future, I will enter the ending selection mode by pressing Y when I see the brown button on the right that has many branches. Then I may switch between my previous decisions at will. Maybe I can discover some new possibilities this way, especially when the letters from the same person are somehow not in a straight line. I should pay extra attention in these cases. However, not all of the new possibilities can be discovered so easily. Some of them might be hidden really well. Some imagination might be necessary to uncover these hidden secrets.
Okay. Lots of secrets. I wonder. Let's see if we go... Bad C rank. So yeah, that gives them both their... Oh, if we change who leaves the note? I looked at Lei Wen, who was sitting by the window, and she was looking back at me, too. She should be focusing on her test. I shook my head and signaled to her to get back to the test. She lowered her head. Half an hour later, the exam was over. I left a note. I asked Lei Wen to come and meet me in the tutoring room after school. I knew many senior students were going through a lot of pressure, but there were probably less than 10 students who were willing to talk to their teachers about it. Lei Wen had been through a lot with her own family. I decided to give her some encouragement before Gakko. We greeted each other. I told her she had done well on today's test, and to keep it up for Gakko in a few days. She was barely paying attention, though. She seemed distracted, and she wasn't following the conversation the whole time. I figured I had said what I wanted to say, so I sent her off. And then I saw her from the window, running out of the school like an innocent little deer. That kid. She didn't have a worry in the world, did she? Well, W, I will make sure to keep you my promise. I took a peek at Miss Yang, and she was staring right back at me. I was so startled that I almost jumped, and suddenly I could understand the questions on the exam again. Thank goodness. Whatever. I need to finish the exam first before worrying about anything else. If I screwed this up, I wouldn't be able to go anywhere after school. A note had been left on my desk, asking me to go to the tutoring room after school. After school, Miss Yang was waiting for me in the tutoring room. She told me I did exceptionally well this time and encouraged me to keep it up. She even told me that if I needed any advice or help with anything else in life, I should feel free to come talk to her. I kept thinking about her words on my way home. That was the first time she had ever said something like that to me. It felt a little strange. It wasn't too late when I got home. I knocked on his door softly, no response. I sent him some more texts, no response either. His lights were off the whole evening, too. Let's see, oh wow, now there's a whole bunch of endings. For the both of them. Just when my mind came back from wandering, the bell signaling the end of the exam had just rung. Everything had gone well. I left a note. I asked Lei Wen to come and meet me in the tutoring room after school. She did unusually poor today, almost dropped to the bottom of the class. It was very unusual. Lei Wen had been through a lot with her own family since Gakko was almost upon us. As her head teacher, I had decided to give her some tough love. However, no matter how hard I scolded her, she was barely paying attention. Other than the occasional yes and she didn't look like she was listening at all, not to mention self-reflecting. I suppose I shouldn't go overboard either. I figured I had said what I wanted to say. so I sent her back to the group study session. I shouldn't wind her up too tight. I took a peek at Miss Yang. She was looking out of the window and seemed to be lost in her own thoughts. What was she thinking about? Could it also be about Mr. Wynn's resignation? Why the hell was I thinking about that? I was such an idiot. I stared at the paper as hard as I could, but I still couldn't focus. How pathetic. What should I do? If only there was something to help me focus on the exam. The time for the exam soon ran out. I could already see myself sitting in the mandatory study sessions after school. A note had been left on my desk asking me to go to the tutoring room after school. After school, Miss Yang was waiting for me in the tutoring room. She told me I did extremely poor this time and that I had to stay for the study sessions today. During the session, I kept staring at my phone, hoping that he would respond to my messages. Nothing. It was 11 p.m. when I got home. I knocked on his door softly. No response. I went to check his balcony. The lights were still off. I sat on the floor with my back against the door, thinking that I would be able to hear him if he came back in the middle of the night. 1 a.m. 2 a.m. It began to rain outside the window. 3 a.m. 4 a.m. It was almost morning. What should I do if I still couldn't find him tomorrow? I suddenly had a bad feeling. Would I ever be able to see him again? Let's see if she does cheat. Just when my mind came back from wandering, the bell signaling the end of the exam had just rung. Everything had gone well. A note had been left on my desk asking me to go to the tutoring room after school. After school, I came to the tutoring room as Lei Wen had asked. I knew many senior students, were going through a lot of pressure, but there were probably less than 10 students who would be willing to talk to their teachers about it. Nevertheless, I was thrilled that Lei Wen had come looking for me. We were chatting casually about the day's test when she suddenly started crying. She was sobbing when she told me that she had cheated during the exam. What surprised me the most was her reason. I was at a loss. Once upon a time, I might have had the same honesty and courage as she had, but at some point, I had turned into this middle-aged woman who would be gossiping about other people in the office. I knew it was just a waste of time. I knew those fake compliments we kept telling each other meant absolutely nothing. But I still locked myself into this mundane life, day after day after day. That day, Lei Wen and I talked so much, like we were truly best friends. About cheating, about Gakko, and about W. Sorry, W. I broke my promise. A thought that had never occurred to me appeared in my head. Should I just copy it? But I had never cheated in my entire life. But if I didn't, I would have to stay in detention for extra study sessions after school. I didn't want to stay. I just wanted to go back home as soon as I could. I took a peek at Miss Yang. She seemed to be lost in her own thoughts. I made up my mind and decided to copy Jimmy's answers. I never knew that Jimmy was such a genius. No one ever paid much attention to him. The time for the exam soon ran out. I took out another exercise book after the exam, but my mind wasn't in it. I left a note. After school, Miss Yang came into the tutoring room as expected. I confessed to her about everything involved in cheating on the exam. She crossed her arms in front of her and stared into my eyes. Why did you do it? Because I couldn't solve any of the problems. She kept staring at me with an even more intense look. It wasn't a hard exam, at least not for you. I couldn't focus, and I have somewhere that I have to be tonight, so I was worried about having to stay for study sessions. I couldn't think of any convincing lies right on the spot, so I told Miss Yang the truth about everything. about why I couldn't solve the problems, about why I was unwilling to stay after school, even the truth about him. I fell into silence when I finished. I grabbed onto my skirt tightly and lowered my head. I couldn't look Miss Yang in the eyes. Aren't you neighbors? You should be able to see him anytime you want, right? I just have a feeling that I must see him as soon as I can, otherwise I might. I had no idea what I was talking about, but Miss Yang laughed. She was laughing, but tears were coming out of her eyes. Kids these days. I'm really envious of you. You know what? I guess you could call it a sixth sense. Mr. Wen. He's got cancer. Miss Yang wiped away her tears. Stomach cancer. Late stage. Oh no. We missed 2 endings for both of them. I don't know what to do. If the S ending is the bad ending, we got a new letter.
好想再见他一面。
为什么我要遭遇这样的事？
Oh, look. So we have a new outcome. But we can't hear it because we gotta get through this. And to get through this, we have to figure out this. Mama didn't have any family in Hong Kong. A few regular customers and I held a funeral service in his name, but not many people showed up. There were some familiar faces, though. For instance, Ray. Throughout the service, we had kept our distance, pretending not to know each other. People thought Mama died because he had been accidentally caught in the crossfire between some of his customers. They lamented his bad luck. However, I knew the truth about his death. It was because of me. It was all because of me. Half a month later, I began to consider leaving this place full of nightmares and going back to Mexico. It was a famous local shopping center with an unusual name, and the prices in the center were even more unusual. I hadn't seen Carlos for so long, and I wanted to bring him something nice. But looking at those fancy men's coats, I couldn't help but be at a loss. It had been so many years, I didn't even know what size he would be wearing. I was sizing a brown coat against myself while looking in the mirror, when I felt a sense of danger coming from more than one direction. The elevator at the southwestern corner, the discount department in the northwestern corner, the food cart that sold juicy beef balls in the southeast corner. If I were an assassin of B+ level, they were probably around C-. Still, I was outnumbered. Besides, I didn't have my dagger or gun on me since I didn't expect I would need them. I pretended to not have noticed them and slowly walked towards the security stairwell in the northeastern corner. I tried to keep close to the other shoppers. However, the security stairwell turned out not to be so secure either. The only route left was to go towards the 4th floor. They were doing some renovation on the 4th floor. Construction materials were everywhere, but there were no workers around. But then I spotted a sniper with a rifle on the roof of the building across the street. I had to scratch my plan of escaping by the window ledge. I could hear footsteps of different sizes coming from inside the stairwell, even though they were clearly trying to keep it light. I had no choice but to hide in a storage room full of cleaning supplies. I sat down in an upside-down bucket, feeling defeated. I would always dream about the end of my life, every time I went on a mission for Ray. I'd had the same kind of dream over a dozen times. Therefore, my current situation wasn't completely unexpected to me. Still, I felt a little choked up. I put my hand into my pocket, hoping to find a napkin. Instead, I found a wrinkled business card. A business card that was very suspicious by all standards. 999-666-888. I half-heartedly text a message to the number. asking Assassin Zucco for help. To my surprise, I soon received a reply, albeit an automated one. This number only accepts messages in Morse code. Your message was not valid. Please edit and try again. That was interesting. My training did include Morse code, but I hadn't used it for a long time. Let me think. It should be ... dash ... SOS sent. I got another response. ... ADS, short for address. They wanted to know where I was. But before I could respond, the people outside had shot the storage room door full of holes. Strangely, I didn't die. Every day, people came in and out of the dungeon in which they were holding me. They tortured me in various and creative ways, day after day, unleashing their profound hatred. They pulled off my fingernails, cut off my fingers and toes, and dipped my hands and feet into salt water. They burned me with a red-hot iron poker and poured boiling oil on me. They had gouged out my eyes so I could only tell them apart by their voices. But they all kept asking me the same question. Who do you work for? I would never tell them. I would take it to my grave. No, to my hell. Eventually, I could no longer tell who was torturing me anymore. My only regret was that I didn't have a cyanide capsule with me. However, there was this one young man named Ren who had asked me once if there was anything he could do for me during his shift. He said he would try his best to do whatever I asked, except for letting me go or killing me. I thought for a while and smiled. I have a younger brother named Carlos. If you meet him someday, please be nice to him. Well, I didn't deserve to ask for forgiveness from the Heavenly Father. I was doomed to go to hell. My only wish left was that my brother could be well and happy.
Morse code? That was an interesting human invention. A is ... B is ... C is... who am I talking to?
Alicia. Okay, so we have a Morse code puzzle to solve. That's gonna be fun. Let's see here. We don't have time to really post a message, so if we do ... see here. We know A is ... I probably spelt it wrong. Oh, maybe I should look up a Morse code thing. Well, what the hell? I wasn't really holding my breath. There was no way they could save me in the time, even if I could give them the right address. I had given up all hope when the people outside shot the storage room door full of holes. Strangely, I didn't die. Every day, people came in and out of the dungeon in which they were holding me. They tortured me in various and creative ways, day after day, unleashing their profound hatred. They pulled off my fingernails, cut off my fingers and toes, and dipped my hands and feet into salt water. They burned me with a red-hot iron poker and poured boiling oil on me. They had gouged out my eyes so I could only tell them apart by their voices. But they all kept asking me the same question. Who do you work for? I would never tell them. I would take it to my grave. No, to my hell. Okay. Man, I hope that doesn't repeat. All the time. Nice, so it's just the bad ending. It was the name of the shopping center. I wasn't really holding my breath. There was no way they could save me in time, even if they wanted to. And even if they got here, there were 10 floors in the center. By the time they found me, I would be long dead. I was right. In the end, I wasn't saved by this Zucco man. Instead, I was filled full of holes behind the storage room door. Suddenly, strangely, I didn't die. Every day, people came in and out of the dungeon in which they were holding me. They tortured me in various and creative ways, day after day, unleashing their profound hatred. They pulled off my fingernails, cut off my fingers and toes, and dipped my hands and feet into salt water. They burned me with a red-hot iron poker and poured boiled oil on me. They'd gouged out my eyes so I could only tell them apart by their voices. But they all kept asking me the same question. Who do you work for? I would never tell them. I would take it to my grave. No, to my hell. Okay, well that's better than the bad ending we had. X4 sent. X4 was short for as fourth floor. There was no time to send something more specific. I'd even know if they could read it. Boom! The entire storage room shook. I couldn't hear any people outside anymore, only the sizzling of burning flames. I pushed away the mop that had just fallen on me and opened the metal door. The entire floor appeared to have been bombed by a fighter jet. The people there weren't able to escape from the attack. They were all lying on the ground, dead. The sniper across the street was dead too. The sniper across the street was gone too. I jumped off of the ledge from the fourth floor and grabbed a hoodie in a nearby shopping stall. Then I followed the safest path back to the Chungking mansions. I opened the door, and the first thing I saw was an adult magazine. You were breaking and entering. No, I'm just reading in my good friend's home. I am not your good friend. I had noticed the intrusions before I came in. Right now, the surprise visitor was sitting on my bed. He was holding an adult magazine from 3 months ago, and he had a sarcastic smirk on his face. Well, would you like to be my good friend then? Or, to be more precise, my associate. No thanks. I intend to leave Hong Kong soon. I missed Mexico so much. I missed Carlos so much. He tossed me a phone. I caught it and saw a list of names on the screen. Every name was followed by a photo and a series of digits. I was the 8th name on this list, and the number after it looked massive. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. $2 million. Doesn't it look fantastic? Do you have any family? If so, it's time to cut them off. I tossed the phone back to him. I looked at him and sighed. Why didn't you just kill me? You still owe me for the RPG. It was really expensive, and $2 million is nowhere near enough to cover it. Bullshit. Did anybody ever tell you that you are full of it? Fine. This is the real reason. He rolled up his sleeve, and I saw a tattoo on his muscular arm. It was a little rabbit, carrying a carrot. It's actually a number. Can you tell me what it is? Can you tell what it is? The folding ears of the rabbit, the carrot that was sticking out of the body, and the big feet. It was a 3. I believe you have something similar on you. I involuntarily touched the tattoo on my upper stomach. The dragon tattoo. I remembered exactly what it looked like. It was also a number, 6. Zucco left. I collected all of my important possessions and put them into a small suitcase. I asked someone else to send all of the money I had to the orphanage anonymously. From here on, I would never write another letter. I had nothing in my wallet but a business card. It had a simple design, but unusual contact information on it. A few words were printed in bold on the thin white card. Zucco. Assassin Broker. Send your resume to 999-888-666. Okay, let's see. So that is all the endings. Good. Now I'm scared. Hey, we freed up Carlos's letter. I sat on the bottom bed of the only bunk in the tiny room. I held my head in my hands, thinking about the most baffling question of the moment. Why was I in prison? About half a day ago, 2 policemen had arrested me on the street. They put me in their patrol car and brought me straight here, Hong Kong Central Prison. No one would answer any of my questions, and they beat me up whenever I showed any resistance. Then they just threw me inside this empty room. There was nothing in here except a bunk bed, a wooden desk, a sink, and a toilet. It didn't even have a window. I suppose this was what they called a jail cell. Cell 28, open up. The door opened from outside. Someone came in. Right, it must be a prank by Ren and the guys. They're probably just trying to give me a good scare. They must be getting me out now. However, the person that came in had a pale face, wider than the wall, and a pair of lips redder than blood. They were also wearing a strange, long robe. It was a ghost. I'd always been afraid of ghosts since I was a little kid. I jumped onto the bed and hid under the blanket, trembling in fear. Get out, your bed is the one on top. Don't lie on me. How dirty. I heard a soft voice from outside the blanket. It actually sounded like a human. I climbed out of bed and stood aside, watching the new person change into the prison uniform and wash himself. He seemed to be right at home. Soon the scary ghost had become a short young man with a clean haircut and an innocent-looking face. He was my cellmate, Hotaru. Although we had just met, Hotaru was a really easygoing guy, and he immediately told me everything about how he had ended up here. Hotaru was from Japan. He had a long-term girlfriend from China. The only problem was that the girl came from a very prestigious family. They didn't approve of Hotaru. However, they still kept seeing each other in secret. They would fly across the sea every once in a while just to be together. Eventually, they realized they would never receive her family's blessings, so they decided to elope. Unfortunately, when they were finally ready to run away together, the girl was killed in an accident. Hotaru was devastated. Being so far away in Japan, he didn't even know what had really happened to her. He came to Hong Kong and tried to talk to the girl's relatives and family that he knew, hoping to piece together the clues. His efforts finally paid off. In the end, he learned that one of her family members was responsible for her death. She was merely collateral damage in a vicious power struggle. Hotaru wanted to revenge her death, but he didn't have any power or any connections in this distant land. He had to seek help. He remembered a professional assassin he had known in Japan. He was famous for his creative ways of eliminating targets. Some people referred to him as the Magician. He also had a strange hobby, old adult magazines. Hotaru was able to find out that the Magician happened to be in Hong Kong at the time too. However, hiring him required lots and lots of money, which Hotaru didn't have. Hotaru began to do everything he could for money. Inevitably, he dabbled in some illegal activities. Eventually, he was caught and thrown into prison. He still wouldn't stop. To him, the prison was just another society, not unlike the ones outside. It was populated by plenty of residents with all kinds of different values. It wasn't just the guards or the warden. Even some of the prisoners might have unusual and powerful backgrounds behind them. Hotaru hustled amongst the people. He was willing to do anything and everything for profit. He smuggled contraband. He traded information with the prisoners. He gambled with them. He bribed the guards, complimented them, sometimes even sold his own body. Hotaru said as long as he could get his revenge, he didn't care about himself at all. He began to choke up. I was so angry after hearing his story. I was also feeling both admiration and sympathy towards Hotaru. If I were in his shoes, I probably wouldn't be able to do what he had done. Unfortunately, I had no more than a few $100 on me, and that was all I could give him for now. I believed every word Hataro had told me. The next day, during lunchtime, I was mocked relentlessly by the other prisoners. "Son, you should be thankful that you only had a few $100 on you. I told you he was going to fall for it. Hurry, give me my 100. What kind of story did he tell you this time? Deceased parents?" Although what he said, it's not entirely made up either. I had known guards out of 10 here have played around with him. I was so angry and I dropped my spoon and ran back to my cell. Hataro was sitting on the bed with his legs crossed, making a pyramid out of poker cards. "You lying bastard, give me back my money." Hataro paid me no attention. He just put 2 more cards on top of the pyramid. A mini TV was playing a Japanese prank show near his knees. The sound of laughter came out of the TV right on cue, as if they were mocking me too. I stepped forward and turned off the TV. You monster." I dragged him off the bed angrily. A pyramid of cards collapsed and they scattered all over the floor. The air in the cell seemed to have suddenly frozen. People began to gather right outside the cell. A tall, strong guard walked in through the crowd. I recognized him. He was the one who had taken my mugshot when I came in and searched my belongings. I seem to recall that he was from the UK. Everyone called him Morgan. I was about to tell Morgan what had happened when he punched me right in the face. Hataro wasn't completely lying, at least. Everyone in here might have some kind of unusual background behind them. Why was I so unfortunate? Not only did I end up in prison, I also had to live with such a bastard of a cellmate. Lord, was this part of your trial for me? Carlos. Aw. Let's see this new person. 5 years wasn't really a long time. But when I looked down on Hong Kong from the airplane window, all I could remember was some fractured memories about this city. Everything I could remember about Hong Kong seemed to be connected to a coffee shop called Maple House. However, when I finally found the old address of the coffee shop, there was only a real estate agency at the location. I tried asking around the neighborhood, and people told me that the matron of the coffee shop had died in an accident. They also said a few regular customers had tried to keep the shop open in his name, but the landlord had refused to extend the lease. That meant that I didn't really have a reason to stay in this city any longer. I felt a little disappointed. Nevertheless, instead of wandering the streets aimlessly, I might as well go back to the UK sooner. My mental condition hadn't been very stable recently. If I suffered an attack here, my doctor friend half a world away wouldn't be of much help. For example, I couldn't even tell how much just earlier really was. As far as I could remember, it had been a clear night. I was walking out of the alley in front of the coffee shop when I pulled my blazer tighter around myself. It was quite dark in the alley, except for the pale white moonlight shining down from above. I unintentionally looked up at the moon. Then all of a sudden, I felt the moonlight getting wider and brighter, and it was almost blinding. After a deafening moment of buzzing in my ears, I blacked out. When I woke up again, I found myself lying in the bed of the hotel room I had booked. On the other side of the same bed, another man with a scruffy face and long hair was lying down, snoring loudly with no inhibitions. Who was this man? Had he brought me back here? How would he even know that I had been staying here? I nervously rummaged through his luggage. Besides a camera and some daily necessities, I also found a passport and a work ID. Apparently, he was a policeman from Korea. Maybe he's a tourist. Perhaps he was just a good Samaritan who had decided to return the lost item he had found by the road. After I calmed myself down, I realized that I was still wearing the same clothes as before I had left. The wrinkles on my clothes and the germs on the bed from the other man were both making me feel quite uneasy. In any case, I couldn't call for room service before he left, so I decided to get changed first. I changed into my clean clothes and walked into the main room. I sat down and sunk deep into the soft couch. The digital clock on the table said that it was almost 10 p.m. on Tuesday night. I decided to think about something before the man woke up. I used to want to become a doctor. Oh, it might be Jack! But I never did. The reason was that while I had been studying for the qualifications, I discovered that I had a serious condition. It was called selective cognitive dissonance. It was a hereditary disease. A person who suffered from this disease would selectively manipulate their own memories about people and events based on their own psychological cognition. Simply put, their own brain would tamper with their memories without their realizing it. When I first found out that I had this condition, I also realized that all of my memories might not be accurate or even true at all. I was terrified. I couldn't stop myself from second-guessing the truth of my own memories. In the UK at the time, I had a psychologist friend. He helped by treating me with hypnosis therapy. The treatment allowed me to forget the unpleasant memories from my past. He told me that I was an entirely different person after the therapy. Afterwards, I had a few good years, but there were some side effects too. I couldn't remember what my parents looked like, nor where my home was. For the past 2 years, they had also been more serious reactions too. To some fragmented, horrifying images would suddenly flash before my eyes. I would feel severely sick or even pass out. My friend told me that the hypnosis might be wearing off, or that my condition might be deteriorating. Whatever the case, we had decided to do another session after I had finished my trip and returned to the UK. I was staring at the TV opposite the couch when I suddenly sensed an inexplicable chill spreading over my entire body. It felt like the entire room was spinning, and I could hear nothing but an overwhelming buzzing in my ears. At the same time, a number of unimaginable visions were swirling through my mind. I could feel it. I could feel a crack opening in my brain, and something sticky, rotten, and pitch black was coming out of a cocoon. I was having a relapse. I held my arms tightly around myself. I knew I was about to completely lose control. There was a knife on the nearby desk. I could see my own reflection in the blank TV screen. My face was gradually overlapping with some of the gruesome visions in my head. It was too late. I remembered. I remembered everything. My parents' faces, my home, and my hellish childhood. The buzzing in my ears and the spinning were morphing into excruciating pain, pinching every single nerve in my body. Those bloody memories and the cruel truth that they implied were pushing me to the brink of my sanity. If I was on that edge, my illness would take over my mind and push me over the cliff, and then history would repeat itself. I do not want to become someone I hated again. I do not. I cannot. I refuse. I must stop myself. I picked up the knife on the desk and stabbed myself in the throat at the perfect angle and the perfect depth. I could not afford to leave anything to chance. Goodbye, Dad, Mom, this world. I just hope that in my next life I could be a good, healthy child. Okay. So we don't want him to stab himself. But are we ready to make Carlos a murderer? I say why not. Let's do it. Let's fall down the rabbit hole. I angrily dragged him off the bed. I grabbed the knife on the desk and held it against his pale and tender neck. The pyramid of cards collapsed and then scattered all over the floor. The air in the cell seemed to have suddenly frozen. I just wanted to scare him, and surprisingly, it worked. Taro said he would give me my money back the next day. However, on the next day, not only did I not see a penny of my money, I was moved into another cell. Since then, I would often find my food tickets gone, or my uniform thrown in the toilet, stained with filthy things. But my new cellmate was a huge meathead. I didn't dare complain to anyone about him. Taro never returned my money, but somehow I found myself missing him a little. I could see my own reflection in the blank TV screen. My face was gradually overlapping with some of the gruesome visions in my head. It was too late. I remembered. I remembered everything. My parents' faces, my home, and my hellish childhood. The buzzing in my ears and the spinning were morphing into excruciating pain, pinching every single nerve in my body. Those bloody memories and the cruel truth that they implied were pushing me to the brink of my sanity. If I was on that edge, my illness would take over my mind and push me over the cliff. And then history would repeat itself. I do not want to become someone I hated again. I do not. I cannot. I refuse. I must stop myself. I pulled the window open and looked down to the ground, 15 floors below. I stepped over the bars and fell to the concrete. I could not afford to leave anything to chance. Goodbye, Dad, Mom, this world. I just hoped that in my next life I could be a good, healthy child. Huh? Okay. Let's see here. Well, that won't change Carlos's fate. The policeman was no longer asleep. He was standing at the door to the bedroom. He was holding his head in his hands and looked confused and neurotic. He looked at me as if he had just done something despicable to him. He looked at me as if I had just done something despicable to him. However, I was the only one who was really losing control. The image of him screaming "monster" at me lingered in my brain. Those horrifying fragments of memory were beginning to become even clearer. I couldn't control myself. I chuckled, then laughed, and then screamed. I felt some changes happening inside me. Something not quite right. To make sure I could still control myself, I lunged at him. We were tangled together, hitting each other as hard as we could with our fists and feet. I needed to relieve what was piling up in my mind in the most primal way. I pushed his head away with my hands and slammed it into the TV screen, which then shattered into pieces. But I didn't win the fight. The black barrel of a gun was pushed up against my left temple. The person who was holding the gun had the same face as the policeman, but I could see something different, something much more frightening. You're a monster. He pulled the trigger, and those were the last words I ever said in this world. Okay, so it sounds like he met Kang, which is weird. We should put everything on Carlos's side. Okay, we'll put everything on this guy's side. What if this is Park? It didn't look like I was going to get my money back. What else could I do? Should I hit him? No, I couldn't do something like that. I paced across the small yard for 20 laps. As I realized that I would have to spend my time with him day after day, I felt even more depressed. If only there was some other way to teach him a lesson without violence. Why was I so unfortunate? Not only did I end up in prison, I also had to live with such a bastard of a cellmate. Lord, was this part of your trial for me? The image of the woman on TV hysterically screaming "monster" lingered in my eyes. Why? Why was I having such a strong reaction to this word? A few blurry visions were beginning to come together in my head. Some of them were starting to become even clearer. There was a room without lights. A man who looked like a doctor, and me as a child. He was a monster, and his actions destroyed my sense of self. When we clashed with each other, only one could survive. I felt some changes happening inside me. It felt so good, as if a group of people had been tolerating a smoker in an enclosed space, and then the smoker was suddenly killed by a falling meteor. Dang. I picked up the knife and walked into the bedroom. There was one tiny detail that had been bothering me for a little while. I opened his luggage again. I confirmed that the necessities did not just belong to just one person, neither were they new. There were multiple pairs of underwear in different sizes. My confused memories failed to fill in the missing pieces. Pushed the knife against his throat lightly, thinking that I would conduct an interrogation on him once he woke up. I didn't know that his instinct to danger was much stronger than I could ever have expected. Click. Before I knew it, the black barrel of a gun was pushed up against my left temple. Mr. Policeman, who just woke up, was on the other side of the gun. I could tell from his expression that he wasn't afraid. That was truly frightening. I dropped the knife. You're a monster. He pulled the trigger, and those were the last words I ever said in this world. Okay. There's one more ending for Carlos, and 2 more endings for our mysterious person. And this will give us another ending for him, at least. The policeman was no longer asleep. He was standing at the door to the bedroom. He was holding his head in his hands and looked confused and neurotic. He looked at me as if I had just done something despicable to him. However, I was the one who was really losing control. The image of him screaming "monster" at me lingered in my brain. Those horrifying fragments of memories were beginning to become even clearer. I couldn't control myself. I chuckled, then laughed, and then screamed. I felt some changes happening inside me, something not quite right. To make sure that I could still control myself, I picked up the knife on the desk and lunged at him. I stabbed him in his shoulder. He suddenly dropped his defending hand and became extremely quiet. Next, I saw his eyeballs twitching, and he mumbled something. I had a bad feeling, so I tried to pull the knife out, but my right hand was caught. I looked at him again. I couldn't believe my eyes. The person standing in front of me had the same face as the policeman, but I knew they could not have been the same man. He had turned into something different, something much more frightening. You're a monster. He twisted my arm with superhuman strength and pushed the knife I was holding into my own throat. And those were the last words I ever said in this world. Dang. Okay, so something about monster is triggering him. And we don't want to give him a knife. Okay. Maybe it's one of those things we have to wait and see. So it does have a Y branch. We just gotta find what endings are going to fix it. Is there anything? We can't hide anything. Okay. I looked at the fruit knife and I had an idea. I decided to swallow my anger, for now. Later that night, I was lying on the top bunk, waiting with my eyes open. Hataro turned in his sleep. Squeak! Bang! The entire bed shook violently, and I heard a panicking scream under me. I looked down, feigning ignorance. The bottom bunk only had a metal frame left. There was a few broken pieces of wood on the floor. The screws that I had loosened up earlier were lying innocently in the corner of the cell. Hataro sat on the floor in shock, still processing what had just happened. You sucker. Back at the orphanage, they had been a fat little kid who would always bully me. I once taught him a lesson in the same way. Although I was scolded by Alicia, it still felt really good. They needed a week to fix the bottom bunk. In the meantime, Hataro was temporarily moved to another cell. Being in the cell alone was quiet, too quiet. I used to sleep in the top bunk in the orphanage, and Alicia would sleep on the bottom one. It wasn't a sturdy bunk bed. Alicia would have to hold the bed every time I climbed up. Otherwise, it felt like the bed would immediately topple over. Oh, how I wished that I would find her sleeping down there when I woke up. I flipped the wet pillow, lay my head on it again, and closed my eyes. I had to seriously start thinking about what to do next. The image of the woman on TV hysterically screaming "monster" lingered in my eyes. Why? Why was I having such a strong reaction to this word? A few blurry visions were beginning to come together in my head. Some of them were starting to become even clearer. There was a room without lights, a man who looked like a doctor, and me as a child. He was a monster, and his actions destroyed my sense of self. When we clashed with each other, only one could survive. I felt some changes happening inside me. It felt so good. As if a group of people had been tolerating a smoker in an enclosed space, and then the smoker was suddenly killed by a falling meteor. I left the hotel. I walked in the middle of the street under the pale moonlight. I used to believe God was real when I was a kid, but if he or she were real, none of those things would have happened to me. People like me, we didn't really need a God. We just needed a dagger. I decided to stay in Hong Kong. There must be a lot of people here who could use a dagger like this, a dagger like me. Oh look, we got their S endings. But we still don't know who this mysterious guy is. And we have Story in the Rainbow of Big Brother. I wonder if we should look at if we have this on A, none of that stuff happens. Oh, I wonder if we should look up. Where is it? Not the kidnapping case. Oh, we got a new letter.
Lo siento.
Boy with a baseball cap.
부처님, 나도 좀
Unit
도와줘요.
4 gone.
내 탓이야.
Life in the
바보같이.
archives. Oh, cool. Alright. We're actually going to call it quits there tonight. And we'll pick up where we left off. This is super interesting. Alright, we might have to go back and play some of the other endings just to find some of these turnabouts. Alright. Thanks for playing with me, everybody. I'll see you all again next time. Bye!